Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to use Wireshark to passively capture and examine TCP IP packets. Wireshark is a network protocol analyzer. It lets you capture and interactively browse the traffic running on a computer network. So I'm using my Backtrack system, which comes with Wireshark already installed. So I'll go up to Applications, select Backtrack, Information Gathering, Network Analysis, Network Traffic Analysis, and select Wireshark. First, I'm going to create traffic using the FTP protocol and show how Wireshark can be used to capture usernames and passwords that are sent in clear text to an FTP server. So to connect to my FTP server, I'm going to select the command line terminal, type FTP space 192.168.2.50. This is the IP address of my FTP server that I have set up in my virtual environment. Before I connect to the server, I'm going to go back to Backtrack and select Interface List, and I want to make sure that the network interface of my Backtrack system is checked, which it already is. It's ETH1, and I know this because my IP address of my Backtrack system is 192.168.2.128. I'm going to click Start, and this start capturing packets. Go back to the command line, press Enter. I'm going to enter a username to connect to the FTP server, which is CMIT321. Press Enter. And now I need to enter the password. Press Enter. This will connect me to the FTP server. Now I'm going to go back to Backtrack, and I'm going to stop capturing packets by selecting the little red circle with the white X in it. So the default settings for Wireshark, you'll notice each one of these rows in this main window, each row represents an individual packet. It also represents the time that the packet was captured, the source IP, and the destination IP, as well as the protocol used and some information about the packet. So we're looking for FTP traffic. Looks like the first packet here is a response from the server, which is 192.168.2.150 to the Backtrack system. And we can tell by looking at the information for this packet that we are connecting to a Microsoft server. So it says Microsoft FTP service. Scroll down a little bit. The next packet I see here is the username that I entered from my Backtrack system, which is CMIT321, and then a response from the FTP server for a password. And if we skip down on two more packets, we can actually see the password that I sent to the FTP server, which is CMIT uppercase 321 exclamation. So this is a good example of how Wireshark can be used to capture passwords and usernames that are sent in clear text to an FTP server. This would allow an attacker to gain unauthorized access to resources using an authorized account. Okay, now I'm going to capture some website traffic. So I'll go up to Applications, to Internet, and select my Firefox web browser. So I'm going to go and select Wireshark again. Select Capture. Select Start. Continue without saving. And start collecting some fresh packets. Go back to the browser. I'm going to type in www www.umc.edu. Press enter. Wait for the site to come up. Okay, there it is. I'll go back to Wireshark and stop the capture. So now I want to go back and find the packets that relate to the data that I just sent. Because this is TCP traffic, you should see the three-way handshake process that TCP uses to guarantee delivery. So let's look for that first. So this first TCP packet here, and I know that it's a TCP packet because I can look under the protocol column. That tells me that it's TCP. It's sent from my backtrack system, which is 192.168.2.128 to 131.171.9.150. That is the IP address of the UMUC website. I can also look over here under information at some of the information that's contained in the packet. I can see that the SYN flag is set, and this tells me that it's the first step of the three-way handshake. I can also, by selecting that packet, I'm going to this middle pane here and expanding the plus icon next to transmission protocol, and I can see a little bit more information about the packet, such as the source port, which is 33326. This is the port that the request went out on my backtrack system, and the destination port, which is 443. I can also see that this packet has a sequence number of 0. When a host initiates a TCP session, its initial sequence number is effectively random, maybe a value between 0 and 4 million and something. However, protocol analyzers like Wireshark will typically display relative sequences and acknowledgement numbers in place of the actual values. These numbers are relative to the initial sequence number of the stream. This is handy as it is much easier to keep track of relatively small, predictable numbers rather than the actual numbers sent on the wire. So let's take a look at the next packet. And this packet was sent from the UMUC website back to my backtrack system. And it's got a SYN flag and an acknowledgement flag set. So this is the second step of the three-way handshake. And then this third packet sent from the backtrack system to the UMUC website has the acknowledgement flag set. So it's the third step of the three-way handshake. Now, the acknowledgement numbers and the sequence numbers, it's important that you understand how they work, because these numbers can be targeted by hackers for session hijacking purposes. So in order to get a better understanding of how they work, we can use the Wireshark built-in flow graphing utility. So if we navigate up to Statistics and go down to Flow Graph, select TCP flow, click OK. So if we look at this window, each row represents a single TCP packet. The left column indicates the direction of the packet, its TCP ports, the segment length, and the flag set. The column at the right lists the relative sequence and acknowledgement numbers in decimal. So let's take a look at packet 1. Each side of the TCP session starts out with a relative sequence number of 0. Likewise, the acknowledgement number is also 0, as there is not yet a complementary side of the conversation to acknowledge. So if we look at packet 2, the server responds to the client with a sequence number of 0, as this is its first packet in the TCP session, and a relative acknowledgement number of 1. The acknowledgement number is set to 1 to indicate the receipt of the client's SYN flag in packet 1. Notice that the acknowledgement number has been increased by 1, although no payload data has been sent by the client. This is because the presence of the SYN, or it could be a FIN flag, in a received packet triggers an increase of 1 in the sequence. Okay, now if we look at packet 3, like in packet 2, the client responds to the server's sequence number of 0 with an acknowledgement of 1. The client includes its own sequence number of 1, incremented from 0 because of the SYN. At this point, the sequence number for both hosts is 1. This initial increment of 1 on both hosts' sequence numbers occurs during the establishment of all TCP sessions. So let's take a look at packet 4. This is the first packet in the stream, which carries the actual payload, specifically the client's HTTP request in this case. So the sequence number is left at 1, since no data has been transmitted since the last packet in the stream. The acknowledgement number is also 1, since no data has been received from the server either. But note that the packet's payload is 169. Okay, this will be important in the next packet. So if we look at the next packet, this packet was sent by the server solely to acknowledge the data sent by the client in packet number 4, the previous packet. While upper layers process the HTTP request, notice that the acknowledgement number has been increased by 169. So the acknowledgement went from 1 plus 169 to equal 170. And this will go on throughout this whole session. So if we look at the next packet, which has a payload of 1460, we notice that the acknowledgement number increases in the next packet to 1461. So it's sequence number 1 plus 1460 equals 1461, and so on and so on. Sequence numbers are very important when it comes to hacking attacks such as session hijacking. If the sequence number within the receive window is known, an attacker can inject data into the session stream or terminate the connection. The way this is done is by spoofing the client's IP address and then determining the correct sequence number that is expected by the server from the client, and then inject data into the session before the client sends its next packet. The first and second tasks are easily accomplished, but the third is a bit trickier. Tricky, but not impossible. Essentially, the attacker needs a way to prevent the client from sending into the session new data that would shift sequence numbers forward. To do this, the attacker could just send the data to inject and hope it is received before the real client can send new data. Or he or she could perform a denial of service attack on the client, or perhaps use some tricks that use address resolution protocol spoofing. So therefore, it is important that organizations defend against hijacking attacks by implementing security actions at the network level. Network level attacks can be prevented by ciphering the packets so that the hijacker cannot cipher the packet headers to obtain any information which will aid in spoofing. Encryption techniques can be used through such protocols as IPsec, SSL, or SSH. This sums up the basics of using Wireshark to capture and analyze network traffic. The best way to become an expert quickly is to get your hands dirty and start capturing network traffic. There's no doubt that you will find that it can be a helpful tool for everything from capturing firewall rules to spotting an intrusion on the network. Remember that you must always have permission from the network owner before capturing traffic on any network. If you want to learn more about Wireshark, I recommend that you visit the Wireshark website at www.wireshark.org.